Hey, Jennifer Walden here for Mixed Season's Emmy Awards season event. I'm talking about The Sound of Small Acts on Amazon Prime Video. Joining me are Ed Bailie, who's the music supervisor, and the sound effects editor, re-recording mixer, James Harrison, who recently earned a BAFTA TV Craft nom in the sound fiction category for his work on Small Acts. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. So, in an interview with Variety, director Steve McQueen, he said that he went into Small Acts with music in mind. So to paraphrase, he said, music is the hope and the heartbeat of humanity. And reggae is certainly the voice of this film's West Indian community in London of the 60s and the 70s. So, Ed, can you talk about your track selection for Lovers Rock? What were some of the key tracks that helped you to give voice to the story in this episode?
It's of significant note that Steve and Courtney Newland, who wrote Lovers Rock, had quite a lot of music pin drops throughout the whole script, so that they had deeply researched it. Obviously, worked from their own memories and experiences, but also from the collective memories of those that they interviewed and researched throughout the process of making the script. Everything was really quite purposeful and selected with a lot of love and care and attention. And then throughout the process pre-shoot, because as James will be able to share more info on, a lot of the music was recorded on camera and kind of done like on set to get the kind of true experience of the party. So there was always a few pinnacles in the script that needed to be in there. The Janet K. Silly Games track is quite a clear one, which we play through in quite epic style, about 11 minutes of screen time throughout. And then also we've got some really great dub tracks later on, like Revolutionaries and Kinta Dub, which is just a really amazing piece at the end where we just get to see all of the true embracing of music, just the kind of the shackles of life unfurled, and the people on camera just really go for it, just getting completely saturated in the moment and lost to the music. And yeah, I'd kind of say some other kind of really big moments. A really nice moment of levity in the film is the Carl Douglas kung fu fighting use, which is tons of fun. And one that I actually kind of needed, because that was in the script, and it was one that I needed a bit of a chat about to kind of find out about how much it meant to the community. And obviously Steve was fully aware of it and had worked on that exact moment, because to me, I was an era later and it had a completely different meaning to me as a track. So it was really interesting to hear like how much that track resonated. But yeah, I mean, it's dense. We've got a good, how many, James? I think we've got like 26 songs in Lovers Rock.
Yeah, it's something like that, isn't it? It's a huge amount. Yeah, but it's fantastic. You just reminded me of the Kunta Kinte song. It was very trance-like by the end when everyone was just getting in, and I remember when we were mixing it, it was just apart from Silly Games, that was awesome as well. It was my favourite track, the Kunta Kinte one, because we just got into an amazing zone in the mix on that one, and it was just really just so full on. It was incredible.
Yeah, there was a moment in the script where Courtney and Steve had described that as one of the characters as worshipping the bass, and it was described really well in the script about how the wall's rumbling and everything's unfolding, but it just married with that really beautifully. I also really like the Cry Tough in the original's Robin Hood dub at the front of the film as well, just when they're sound checking, when they're plugging in the system, and we have a bit of a montage that runs over some small vignette moments of like Martha and getting ready for the party, and they sing a Blondie song, and it's just actually kind of ducking and diving between different rooms and seeing like we've got like three women in the kitchen preparing for the night who also sing a little a cappella bit of Silly Games. It's kind of a nod to what's coming up. But that all is underscored by the Cry Tough in the originals track, which was an exciting one, and one that we were really glad to get hold of, because I mean it took about a year to be able to pin down the rights for that one. So yeah, there were ones that we fought over to make sure that we could, or fought for to make sure that we could keep them.
And so was that like the hardest track to get the rights for? You said you spent a year on that one. That's crazy.
It was, I think it was, yeah. I mean, there's ones that we had to lose just because of the nature of how it goes, especially when the clock was ticking just before cameras started rolling, and we had songs which needed to be pre-cleared, but Steve was always very welcoming of ideas and very kind of quick at engaging with tracks. So that, there's a few that we always do need to replace in scenarios like this, mainly just because of rights issues more than anything. It's not that we were kind of faced with denials because these were such important films, that was quite an easy point to get across, really, when seeking approvals and that kind of thing. With Cry Tough and the originals, it's actually a Prince Far Eye dub cut of Jennifer Lara music by the score, and it took a while to trace the right people, his estate, who control it, and asking around, making sure that we could chat to his family in Jamaica to get their approval, and a lot of kind of trying to get hold of landline phone numbers, a lot of late night phone calls, but we got there eventually. Some things you've got to fight for; they're too good.
So you had mentioned in the like early on in this film, the kitchen sing along of Silly Games. I love this scene, right? You got this group of women who are like making food for everyone to enjoy, and they're just enjoying each other's company, and they're just having a bit of fun. It's like so beautiful. In terms of like the dialogue, was there singing production sound? What was it like trying to cut and mix this scene?
It was challenging later on, actually, with the a cappella for Silly Games, but the majority of them had really just good voices, and so they were singing. And there's obviously, you always have little pitch things that you have to adjust, but you don't want to do any sort of ADR on that, because you lose the whole energy and the whole performance of what's going on. So as much as possible, we used everything, all the sync that we could, and just tried to get little bits of extras just to help give a bit of weight or breadth if we could in places. But that kitchen scene, it was all just sync, and it was we managed to make it work, and they were great performers. They nailed it.
And was it all one take, or did you have to like cut some bits together?
No, a little bit from other takes, but not very much at all. Not very much at all. There's a little bleed in from another take, but it was they did it. It was very, very good. So it was very lucky, because the way the whole film was shot, if they hadn't been up to scratch, or if their voices hadn't been quite so good, it could have been a bit messy, and it would have stuck out a lot more.
And so, later there's that longer sing along when they're in the party. Again, so production sound here. Did you have to do any additional loop group or ADR to help fill that out?
We did have to do a little bit of additional, just because we wanted a bit more variation, and it wasn't for sort of performance really or anything like that. It was just to give slightly different colours in the vocal ranges, really. And actually, in that scene, Dennis is very sort of prevalent in that as well, because he's there just singing along, and it was just great. He just gels the whole thing together. So yes, we did have to do a little bit extra, but really not much at all, because it was just such a great live performance. And when we did have to add little bits and re-record things, we did it very carefully, and just enough to just help, but we didn't want to take away from the actual performance.
Yeah, it's got this lovely impromptu sort of feel, and even if like everyone isn't singing on key, I mean, that's what makes it feel real and feel, energetic, right? That's where like the energy comes from.
Absolutely. It's weird, because the first time I watched through the film, I got the cut off Steve and Chris. I was watching it through, and the Silly Game song came on, and I was like, oh, this is going on a bit, and just, oh, they'll have to cut this down. And it was like, no, it's going to stay like that for a long time. And every time I watched it, I just got into it, and I never sort of questioned the length of it again, because it just works. It just sort of flowed. It was very interesting to see. And Steve's very much like that. He has this idea and he has this vision. And when he gets into a scene and he feels it, then he's not going to let go of that.
Yeah, that's so true. There's so many moments where, because he's kind of the king of finding the right moment to linger on, to really hammer it home, and like in one scene in another film, it could be hanging on a colander spinning in a kitchen that kind of gives you this really powerful moment after a scene of police abuse and in a rage, and then the following film with Lovers Rock, it's a moment of incredible joy, and he makes sure that you sees it through and that you have enough time to become a part of it. And we were all watching it for the first time during all of the lockdowns and everything during COVID. So it was actually, if anything, all the more enlightening to then have that sequence, because everyone just wanted to be in a room having a party and being a part of that.
So later in the episode, the party, it changes, the mood changes, right? It gets more energetic. Now the dancers, they're like stomping their feet and they're like jumping around to the sounds of Mercury Sound DJ. In terms of effects, because there wasn't a lot of dialogue there, right? It was just really music and effects driven. So in terms of effects, how did you bring this scene to life and make the audience feel like they're on that dance floor and they're present in that place in that time?
It was, guys, it's trial and error, actually, because it was quite a, and you said it sort of, the whole piece sort of evolves. So as you're going through, it's not like you can go, at this point, this is when it steps up again. Every song, it just evolves throughout the evening, like any normal parties. I always remember those old school discos where boys and girls stood opposite sides of the dance hall, and then by the end of the school disco, everyone's just making their way into the centre and everything progresses. So it was a bit like that, and then by the end, it's just this sort of huge mass of energy. But there is dialogue in there, but in terms of effects, it was like the stomping of the feet. So it was really important to get some of that energy, and it was just trying by trial and error to get stuff in there that really helped the scene without taking the viewer away from it, really, and to complement the music as well. So yeah, quite a lot of Foley, but by Foley I mean there's sort of guerrilla Foley, a bit of recording. I had to go down to a local town hall that had a room with really nice floorboards and things like this, because normally on a film like this as well, we'd go to a house, or the house if we could, and we'd set up the recording system and we'd play the music out of speakers and record it from all different rooms. But of course, with the pandemic, we just weren't able to do that. So we were restricted in that sense a lot more. And we'd done lots of Foley recording as well at the house, but unfortunately we weren't able to do that. But we did what we could, and a bit of myself in the local town hall really helped, actually.
And what was your mobile recording rig? What did you take out with you?
I have a few recorders. I have, I'm not going to get too technical, but DPA mics. I've got a Sherps, Neumanns, and things like that. Various over the years, you do just collect lots of microphones, really. My wife doesn't enjoy the cost of that associated with that, but I don't tell her everything, so that's okay. Although she's watching this now, she'll be asking questions. But yes, got probably dug myself into a hole. But yeah, I've got you just accumulate lots of microphones over the years. And again, trial and error, you do something, you listen to how it works, what it's sounding like, and you go back, do it again until you get something that you're happy with.
And did you take various sizes of shoes as well, just to get some variety in these stomping tracks?
Yeah, absolutely.
You got, a bag of shoes in your bag of recorders?
Yeah, smart shoes, boots, trainers, because sometimes you just don't know what's going to sound correct, really. Smart shoes sometimes sound far too clicky with a hard edge to it, so you don't want that. So good solid walking boots usually do the trick, actually. And then you just record it from different spaces, different positions, so you get the different acoustic as well, and that really, really helps.
Was there a production track with effects, and was there a guide track for this? Because they were there, so
they were, but obviously, I mean, it had no physicality on it. It was all sort of vocals and things because if you imagine, it was a relatively small room, so it picked up vocals, but nothing else specific, because it was so tightly packed in that room. and it was I think it was a tough job for the location recordist.
Probably. So my other questions, I think they have more to do with Dennis. So I just have one final question for you guys. Of all the 5 films in this anthology, why did you choose Lovers Rock for Emmy consideration?
I remember when when I was working through them, Lovers Rock was so different to the other films in this set that Steve did, and it was just so uplifting, and it was just one of those films that was a great tonic for me when I was working, because when I started Small Axe, I'd just come off the new James Bond film, so I'd just finished that. Lockdown had sort of started, the pandemic, and everyone was in a real sort of dark place and all this uncertainty. And then I started working on these films for Steve, and we're doing the Mangrove one first, and it was a really tough subject matter, very hard hitting, and then got onto Lovers Rock, and it was just this little ray of light and this breath of fresh air. And as Steve said, he treated it almost like a musical. It was his musical, and it was just lovely to work on, and so uplifting. And so for me is just why I think it's just almost what people need, I think.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And also I just think that in terms of its technical achievements and how that has then been brought to fruition, Lovers Rock is so dense and so rich in its playlisting, in its sound, in its just kind of microcosm of an evening, and yet the narrative arc tells us everything that we need to know about the time from a perspective of joy and from a perspective of love and community, which a lot of people kind of sorely needed upon the time of release, but at the same time was a beautiful opportunity to be able to kind of celebrate that era in Steve's longer term vision that he'd obviously been working away at for a very long time to bring this to the world. So yeah, I mean, it was a real honour to be a part of it, because at every turn, boundaries were pushed to be able to make something so dense in its subject matter.
Cool. Well, that was all my questions. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and best of luck this Emmy season.
Thank you.
Thank you.